If I told you 2 years ago that the Washington Wizards would get both Anthony Davis and Trae Young for a washed Chris Middleton, a 34-year-old CJ McCollum, and just 2 first-round picks, you'd be wondering why on earth the Wizards are trading for AD and Trae, but you'd also be wondering how on earth they got those guys without giving up any real assets. Well, a lot can change in 2 years, because Trae Young and Anthony Davis have gone from all-stars, faces of their franchise, high-value superstars, to, well, this. But if that can happen in just 2 years, who's to say in 2 years' time, the Wizards won't look like geniuses for getting these guys at the lowest value they've had in their entire careers? And this right here is what I love about these trades for the Wizards. This is the best example of having nothing to lose and everything to gain. No matter how washed you think AD is, or how impossible it is to build around Trae Young, these guys have both been all-NBA level players in just the last 2 seasons. They have both led teams to conference finals, one of them has a ring, and most importantly, which I haven't heard many people mention, these guys are actually the perfect match for each other. Remember when everyone was talking about the possibility of Anthony Davis in Atlanta, giving Trae Young a lob threat, a defensive-minded center who can cover up some of those weaknesses on the other side of the floor? Trae Young can make up for some of AD's weaknesses on offense. Remember how tantalizing that was seen, and the picks and the assets Atlanta would have to give up to make it work? Well, we're getting what we wished for. But instead of playing in Atlanta, they're playing in Washington. And instead of giving up young players and first-round picks to make it happen, they've given up basically nothing. Because on the surface, you might think, this is still a risk. Even if it's only 2 first-round picks, the Wizards still gave up future first-round picks for one of the most injury-prone players in the NBA. Do you want to know what those first-round picks are? This year's Thunder pick and a top 20 protected Warriors pick. In other words, the 30th overall pick this year and a mid to late 20s pick in 5 years' time. These picks are more equivalent to second rounders than first round picks, and that's all it took for the Wizards. And in fact, they still have all of their first round picks, which means if this goes terribly, if AD and Trae Young play a combined 15 games together and the Wizards have a terrible record next year, they can still tank. They can still end up with another top-end pick. But I wouldn't expect this Wizards team to be tanking regardless, because this is not them trying to rush the timeline. This is not a move out of desperation. No, there's a big difference. This is a move out of opportunity. And this is a team that already has an established young core. They have possibly 2 future stars in Keyshawn George and Alex Sarr. They have a young guard who is already one of the best shooters in the league, and these trades aren't going to stop them from getting one more elite young player in this year's draft. Because if you were like this guy and thought this might affect the Wizards' chances at a top 5 pick in this year's draft, no, we're not going to be seeing AD or Trae on the floor until next year. And there will be lots of games we don't even see Alex Sarr or Keyshawn George on the floor. Because Anthony Davis and Trae Young are not coming to take over from this young core. They're coming to add to it and help these young guys take the leap, which they have shown flashes of being able to do. Because if you want to know why the Wizards are making these moves, it's not just because they saw an opportunity to get 2 former superstars for absolutely nothing. It's because Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George have established themselves as good NBA players. Because just this season, Sarr and Keyshawn have gone from promising rookies to putting up over 15 points a night. Sarr has gone from a guy who people criticized for his shot selection, lack of strength on defense, and ability to finish around the rim, to a guy who I've actually heard compared to AD at times, which is a very lofty comparison, but with his fluidity on both ends of the floor, he doesn't move like ordinary 7-footers. His shot blocking ability, the ability to stretch the floor, handle the ball, play make a little bit. Alex Sarr has been one of the most impressive young players in the NBA this season. And then there's Keyshawn George, who doesn't get nearly enough credit, averaging 15, 5, and 5 a game as a second-year player. He has size, skill, strength, and touch. A guy who is capable of doing things like this, where he brings the ball up the floor, gets the screen from Sarr, and look how smooth that in and out dribble is before fading to his right and knocking it down. Or how about against Kawhi? Facing him up, getting the screen, and even with Kawhi recovering, that's the size of Keyshawn to have the ability to shoot over the top of a guy like Kawhi. If you haven't watched much of the Wizards, well, I don't exactly blame you, even though they can be fun. This is what Keyshawn George is like in every aspect. He plays under control, he plays with poise. Think of those big bodyguards that can get to wherever they want on the floor as a 3-level scorer, as someone that can play make. Him and Alex Sarr, like I said, they have stamped themselves, and that has allowed the Wizards to make these moves. And now you add a guy like Darren Peterson or AJ DeBanza to this team, and all of a sudden you have not only a core of elite young players, but you have 2 veterans that can elevate the way they play. And Trey has already talked about him wanting to do just that. I know as soon as I run a pick and roll with Alex and I get him a little drop off to a dunk or a lob, or I see Bilal cutting and he gets the ball, that builds trust. They gotta know I give effort on the other end too. We can talk about the inefficiencies of Trey, his defense being horrendous, and he needs to actually deliver on what he's saying about working on defense, because he hasn't done that pretty much his entire career. But one thing Trae Young has done his entire career is be one of the best playmakers we have ever seen. He will find Alex Sarr in spots he has never been found before. Does that sound weird? Whatever. He's going to make all of these guys' lives easier. Trey Johnson as a shooter, he can work with that. Anthony Davis as a lob threat, that's going to be incredible. The one thing that I hope still happens is ensuring Keyshawn George and Alex Sarr still get those reps as ball handlers, as creators. Because as good as Trae Young is right now, and as good as Anthony Davis still is when healthy, the Wizards still need to have these guys running the offense for periods of time. And that is the beauty of being able to stagger minutes, and also the reality of AD not playing 82 games. These guys are still going to get opportunity, but I hope it works as a collective. And on top of all of this, it's not just about how good these guys are, but the reason this is such perfect time for the Wizards is they don't have to worry about the contracts of Trae Young and Anthony Davis. The reason they got these guys so cheap is because other teams don't want to pay them that amount of money. Well, the Wizards have to pay someone. No, I mean it. With the expiring contract of Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum, they were going to have a boatload of cap space. And we know Washington isn't exactly a free agent destinations. And when you have guys like Keyshawn and Alex Sarr and Trey Johnson all under contract for multiple years on rookie deals, the value in the roster is how much those guys are making. And that allows you to offset the contracts of AD and Trae Young. And we also have to consider, when it comes to Anthony Davis, he just had the worst season of his career. Yes, he has been injury prone almost his entire career, but it was just a few years ago, he was all NBA second team. He was 4th for Defensive Player of the Year. One thing about these two guys is they are going to be dominant offensively as a pick and roll partnership. And with Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, and AD defensively, hopefully that can make up for some of the deficiencies on the other end of the floor. At the very least, why not? It's just that simple.